and welcome to everybody. My name is Tim Maguire. I'm a member of the ALD Connect board. I'm also a patient. I am 54 years old. I was diagnosed when I was 37 of AMN. I have 4 children, 3 daughters and a son. My 3 daughters obviously are carriers of ALD. And the impact it's had on my life is obviously mobility and stability. But my motto is adapt, adjust, and move on. So I've been very grateful for many other blessings I have in my life. And I'm grateful to be part of this amazing community of ALD. So what an incredible opportunity we have, with the fact that we're virtual. The participant level, as was mentioned earlier, is extraordinary. We have, probably 3 times or more the participants that we have had in the past. And, one of the benefits that we found from, if there's any benefits from COVID, is that the participation has been really, really high. So thanks for joining us. We have a terrific panel. And the objective here is to have you listen to the panel. And if you have questions along the way, you could either raise your hand or type your question right into the Q&A, which is right at the, depending on what you're using, at the top of your iPad or on the bottom of your computer. Again, thank you for joining us. So let me introduce the panel here briefly. We're really fortunate to have a few panelists here that represent different types of people impacted by the disease. So I'll first introduce Barbara Machado. She's a 60-year-old mother of 3 who lives in Bridgewater, Massachusetts with her husband. Her oldest son underwent bone marrow transplant in 1991, and her second son was a perfect match donor. Her daughter is a carrier. Barbara works as a paraprofessional for more than 20 years before the disease forced her to early retirement. So welcome, Barbara. You can raise your hand if you don't. Okay, thanks for joining us. Sharon Mao is a 36-year-old mother of 2 who lives in Westchester, New York with her husband. Her oldest child, now 4, was diagnosed with ALD via newborn screening. Between balancing work and motherhood, Sharon monitors her son's ALD with the help of a dedicated physician team from New York and Boston. And Ken, who I know well, Dieffenbach, is 36 from central Pennsylvania. Ken and I have spent a lot of time together in our men's group, which I would highly encourage those men that are on the line AMN to come join us. Each month we have a terrific call. It's a great opportunity. He was diagnosed with AMN at the age of 31, and he's a super upbeat, positive guy, and great to have on the call as well. And Jill Smith. Jill has 3 kiddos: Skylar, 20, Grady, 9, Colin, 5, and they live in Salem, New Hampshire. Their son Grady was diagnosed with ALD in 2018 at the age of 7. After noticing what they thought was some hearing changes, they brought Grady into the doctor. After he passed his hearing exams, Grady went to Boston Children's Hospital for further testing, and as they felt something was very wrong. After being sent home and told Grady was just fine, he brought it back. They brought back Grady the next morning and demanded an MRI. A few hours later, learned that Grady had ALD as well as Addison's disease. During this time, they also found that Grady's ALD is spontaneous mutation. The family had no family disease, which is interesting. After finding out he had a low score of 10, they moved very fast. They met with Dr. Eichler at Mass General and got ahead of it with a bone marrow transplant through Dana-Farber and Boston Children's Hospital. After 10 days later, he had a 10-10 unrelated bone marrow match. He received his magic cells in September 2018. Grady had has had extremely lucky outcome with zero progression since then. Grady deals with it with stubborn liver, skin, and eye problems, but is doing very well and being managed at home. Because of where Grady's lesions are, he struggles with auditory, visual, and processing disorder. He no longer comprehends language or sounds very well and depends on reading lips to communicate, but is making great progress with his auditory retraining. He is back to playing his beloved sports and loves spending time with his friends, family. We're so thankful. They're so thankful to have the love and support they receive from the ALD community and getting a chance to be involved with ALD. Not a day goes by they don't thank God for unbelievably lucky. So, okay, great. Awesome. Well, it's one I'd like to do is turn it over. I think, Sharon, you're going to kick us off and talk a little bit about your journey and for the group.
Sure. Thank you for that warm introduction. So as Tim mentioned, I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and my 4-year-old was diagnosed in 2016 through newborn screening. Obviously, at the time, the devastation was so profound and also shocking because, like Jillian, I had absolutely no family history of this disease, never heard of it. Later found out that I'm a carrier, but I'm asymptomatic. So, absolutely shocking. The first step that I took, the first healthcare provider that I saw after I got the blood test from my pediatrician was actually a geneticist who explained the disease to me and did 2 things. First, they recommended certain doctors to me, and then they recommended for me to stay off the internet because they said that there's a lot of misinformation out there and that I couldn't handle it. I actually did neither. And I'll explain myself. What I did was I went on the internet and I went to credible sources like ALD Connect. And I joined the ALD community, who then referred me to world-renowned doctors like Dr. Eichler, Dr. Malak, Dr. Molly Riegelman. They were able to point me to some of the specialists out there that I thought were probably more equipped to handle my situation. And I don't say this to encourage people to rebel against their doctors. That's not the point here. My point is really that as patients and as caregivers, we have a seat at the table. If we hear anything from anyone that kind of feels off or doesn't work with your personal preference, you absolutely have the right to demand answers and find a team that works with your particular situation. So currently, fast forward to now, I've assembled, my healthcare team of, neurologists, endocrinologists, and we go to Mass Gen sometimes for the MRI, and also Weill Cornell because I'm based in New York. So with coronavirus, that's probably the best thing to do right now. And then, we'll be seeing Dr. Eichler when maybe next year. So, right now my 4-year-old, he's asymptomatic, chronic MRIs, but after I had my child, he's my first child, and I always knew that I wanted more children. So, with this situation, I decided with my second to get an amnio to be able to screen for this disease and make a decision for myself. So, and I know that, some people, they have varying levels of comfort in doing so. I personally made the decision to get the amnio and to screen any kind of future pregnancies that I had. So my second child, it does not have ALD. And, if I plan to have a third or a fourth or a 10th, I plan to be doing similar. How I am now, certainly this as a caregiver, and I'm sure many people can relate out there, this is something that always stays with you. It does force us to be, as parents, to be much more mindful. And I think that for me, at least, my personal philosophy is to give my child normalcy. I'm fortunate to be able to do that because we were identified through newborn screen. And normalcy for me means, giving them the best life that I can, and also to be a psychologically stable parent. So I think with normalcy comes being kind to yourself, I know that there can be a credible amount of guilt that comes with being a parent, and particularly for me, a carrier. And I think we just have to all be kind to ourselves and realize that, our children model how we are. And if we're stable, if we're healthy mentally, that really pays dividends with the kind of environment that we provide our children. So how I am today, I'm, cautiously hopeful, very inspired by this community, and eternally grateful to the patient community, as well as all the great physicians out there that are just absolutely incredible.
Great. Thank you so much, Sharon. And boy, the power of newborn screening and what's transpired over the last several years. I think its last time was 37 states. It might be more, but huge impact it's had. So thank you for sharing your story. We'll come back to you with some questions. Jillian, do you want to do some sharing now, or
No, I'll jump in. You prefaced our story pretty well, so I don't have too much I have to follow up on. Yeah, like you said, Grady was a late find. He was diagnosed in August of 2018 when he was 7. We thought he had some hearing issues. We kept pushing it. Brought him to Boston Children's, where you think you're at the best hospital that you can be. And they kept on telling us he was fine, go home, nervous mom type of thing. And the next morning we brought him back and we asked for the MRI to be done, and I wouldn't leave until they did it. And it took some arguing with some of the doctors, and they finally did it. And unfortunately they found that he had ALD. And they sat me in the quiet room and told me what it was. And right away I Googled it, unfortunately. And the doctor we first met there said that he had a pretty sizable lesion, and that it's what you're reading. It's a horrible disease. It wasn't very comforting. So they passed us off to Dr. Eichler. So about 5 days later, we met with Florian, and he met Grady and thought he was a good candidate for BMT, even though he did have a less score of 10. But his only deficit at the time we thought was auditory processing. About 10 days later, we found out that he had a perfect match, unrelated donor. My youngest had tested negative, and we were still waiting for my test results. So we went along with the process. He was admitted a couple weeks later. It was very quick, and he did very, very well during the process. He was up in the hallways playing football every day with his dad. He's a very athletic kid. And he did great. We had very few bumps until after about a month or two after transplant. We started noticing his liver numbers were off. So he does deal with liver, skin, and eye GVHD. That's been not responding very well to medications, but he's home. He's doing great. He is 2 years post-transplant. He's had 0 progression. He's mainstreamed in school, does very well. He's back to playing sports. He's doing wonderful. We were able to meet our donor recently over Zoom. Unfortunately, we were supposed to meet at a gala in New York, but was postponed due to COVID. And recently, we actually just got New Hampshire to pass newborn screening as well. So ALD is now on the chart in New Hampshire. And that's pretty much his story. He's doing very, very well.
Okay, we already have a question coming in, but I'm going to come back to that question in a second. But keep your questions coming as we go through. We'll be going through the questions at the end, just of the introduction. So, Barbara, do you want to go from here, or you want to go last? Or
I'll go last.
All right, Ken.
Oh, man. I like to talk, so. But okay, well, you already pretty much introduced myself. I'm Ken. I'm 36 from Central Pennsylvania. I'll give you a quick family history first, and then we'll go into my situation. My uncle, my mom's brother, passed away at the age of 39 back in 2004. At that time, it was actually misdiagnosed as early Alzheimer's, actually, and it was ALD was never in the picture, and his cause of death was eventually ALD. So that was unfortunate and sad, obviously. And then my oldest brother, he had issues since he was a child. Actually, he had Addison's way back when he was a kid, but like the ALD part of it was never really part of it. So he was taking hydrocortisone therapy for that. And, you know, he lived his life normally up until about early to mid 30s, where he started to get a gait and some of the beginning symptoms of AMN, which is one of the biggest ones. Your walking's weird and you're like, what's going on? You know, so that was him. I have another older brother as well. He's 41. He's still living, and he's got ALD, AMN symptoms, but for the most part, he's holding good. So then, if we fast forward for my oldest brother, shortly he had started to go see Dr. Eichler at Mass General, and the problem I think at the time is he was not getting normal MRIs, and unfortunately it went to cerebral ALD, and that escalated very quickly from about the age of 38 till he passed when he was 39. It went really quick, and unfortunately, you know, he passed. He passed of ALD. We'll give you that, and then we'll go back to me now, because now we got to kind of rewind. I'm all over the place. So when I was 31, you know, knowing what I know about him a little bit, that he was starting to have issues, and knowing what I knew about my uncle, I knew kind of right then and there, okay, this is what's going on. So I went to my family doctor, who then sent me to a neurologist, which again, local doctors are very hard, sometimes hard to work with, because, you know, it's ALD is so rare. They've got to Google it, basically. So, you know, they Google it. I'm an early patient, and, you know, we go through the whole thing. Then she finally gives me my diagnosis that, yes, this is what you have. But having no other patients, she had not much else to say. And at the time, you know, you're doing research, like most people said, like, you research it, and it's, you know, no, I know what happened to my uncle, and I know because it was happening to my brother. I pretty much left that doctor's visit like it was a death sentence, and, well, I'm probably going to die. I'm going to end up like everybody else. And then I put myself into a stage of depression, which was trying to fix by alcohol, gambling, spending, you know, kind of like I say, the Tim McGraw song, "Live Like You're Dying." That's pretty much what I did to a certain extent, which is kind of ironic, because I got in my car today at leaving work to come here, and that was the song that was on the radio. Like, this is kind of weird. But I did that, and then I started to see Dr. Eichler at that point, and I'll always remember, and I just want to put this out here, I met with his nurse practitioner, Katie, from the clinic, and one of the things she told me is keep your head out of the sand. And little does she know, those words meant the most. They meant to me, because at that point, you know, I was kind of like, you know, she's right. Keep your head out of the sand, because everything's not the same. You know, one thing's not like the other. You know, I might not end up the same way, and, you know, that right there was almost like a total 360, I think. But I'm happy that happened, because if not, I have no idea. You know, who knows, you know, I could have stayed depressed, you know. But anyway, so then, like, you know, I fast forward to today, and within the past couple of years, you know, I started turning to social media. I ALD Connect. I found there's other couple forums out there, and YouTube. I have a YouTube channel where I just post videos. I just give updates, and, like, it's good to put it out there. It's good for yourself to go back and reflect at some points. And I've met people along the way from YouTube that also have their patients, and, you know, they find it interesting. And, you know, that was cool. And, like, through ALD Connect and stuff, like, I've met people, other patients on Facebook, you know, and, like, Jillian, for instance, and a couple other mothers who have, you know, children that are symptomatic, asymptomatic, and, you know, it's good to follow along, but, like, I kind of put it out there, and I don't know if anyone's ever really agreed with me, especially with other AMN men, but in a way, when I look at the childhood version versus the adult version, I feel it's almost like survivor's guilt. As weird as that sounds, you're like, I'm blessed. I had a fairly normal childhood, 20s, and, you know, you look at and it's, you know, your heart breaks. Your heart breaks. But, you know, at the end of the day, you have to tell yourself you're blessed, you're lucky, and, you know, obviously you hope the best for everybody else. But yeah, that's pretty much my story in a nutshell. And, you know, I can talk and talk, but so.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's awesome. Appreciate that, telling your journey, and sorry about your brother.
Thank you.
Okay, Barbara.
Okay, you're gonna have to forgive me because I'm going to read because I'm not good at keeping track of what I
That's
want.
okay.
Don't
You
worry.
take time.
I am the daughter of a symptomatic mother, sibling of an affected sister, and of a brother who died from childhood disease. I am also the mother of a son who underwent a bone marrow transplant, which does not exclude him from developing AMN, and of a daughter who has the gene mutation. At 21, I began having pins and needles in my feet. My legs would buckle, dropping me to the floor. My hips and feet were in pain. My limbs were cold. When I saw a neurologist, he said I was fine, so I concentrated on my son and his episodes of vomiting and dehydration. My parents were never told childhood was a genetic disease. Therefore, no one in my family knew it was a concern. Despite telling our family history to mine and my children's doctors, none made any note to further investigate any correlation with my son's or my symptoms. My son Lee was hospitalized dozens of times for years before he was finally diagnosed at age 7 with Addison's disease and AMN. Yes, AMN. When Lee was 9, he began to have difficulty hearing as well as gait issues. Lee was diagnosed with ALD by Dr. Moser and referred immediately to have a bone marrow transplant using his brother Tony's perfect match. It was Lee's doctor, William Crivet, who asked me if I knew why I had difficulty walking. I did not, and it was he who explained to me that females had symptoms particular to them. It wasn't until my little girl Courtney asked my husband why I kept falling down that I agreed to go see a doctor. I had given birth to all 3 children before Lee was diagnosed, and we learned the connection between childhood and ALD. Depression has always been a part of my life, but learning I passed on this disease causes tremendous guilt. Nighttime leg cramps as well as foot drop were both painful. I was fitted with night splints. My legs were jumping when at rest day and night. I had started to have difficulty writing, but nothing was mentioned that arms could be involved with the disease. Balance has always been an issue for me, worsening over the years. I was fitted with AFOs, which helped me compensate for the weakness. It took some time, but I got used to the AFOs and forearm crutch and continued on with my life. I still fell and was in pain, but I worked and cared for my family while pretending to be fine. I began having trouble controlling my bladder, as well as having difficulty enjoying myself while being intimate with my husband. My legs felt so tight, cold, and extremely heavy. I began having more difficulty with my hands because of the cold, and I had even more difficulty writing due to hand tremors. At 55, I had to stop working due to the inability to stand, fatigue, pain, and tremors. I then started having an intermittent head tremor. Since falling and breaking a hip 3 years ago, I am no longer able to walk any kind of distance. I can't pick up my feet, so I just wear socks and slide along as best I can. I use a walker in the house and wheelchair for any outing. 2 years ago, an intermittent speech tremor began. I am now 60, and I have still all the same physical symptoms, some of which are helped some by medicine. Leaning on the crutch and walker for 30 years has caused deterioration in my shoulders, elbows, hands. Falls now aren't just get back up and go on. Now it's gashes of blood and continued dizziness. I continue to try to stand despite the falls. The fall years ago made sitting painful, and I work to stay upright as long as possible. Most people know how stubborn I am. I call it independent. That is my extremely abbreviated experience. While I am very pleased to have women included today in the mention of the need to have a name for our disease, ALD, symptomatic carrier, AMN, myeloneuropathy associated with carrier status for X-linked ALD gene mutation, or It's all in your head, are some of the names given to women. Currently, my diagnosis is AMN, which confuses those who are not involved in the ALD community. One specialist trying to educate herself Googled AMN, looked at me and said, "You are not a man." Correct. That is why it is time for a name to differentiate females from male. Female symptoms are not the same. Symptoms starting later in life did not apply to me, and involvement of my hands, head, and speech was never conveyed as a possibility in anything I read nor told to me until the symptoms appeared. This information continues to be inaccurate even on ALD sites. Information about women needs to be accurate, published, and available on ALD Connect and everywhere someone looking for can find it. I have always understood the priority for boys and men, and I'm so truly grateful for all who dedicate themselves to finding treatments and screening to save lives. I'm sorry. My son Lee is here now because of their determination. I know many doctors don't know about Addison's disease or ALD, and they don't know about affected women. Education is the beginning of care. It will lead to recognizing all ALD phenotypes and all that therapies are needed for women as well as men. I pray that my daughter and all women will not be dismissed if they ever experience symptoms, and that a name and therapies, will be available to them, as well as all who have a mutation, male and female. Education is why I agreed to share my story today. And if there is any need for more details or study participants, here I am. I'm available to help in any way. Thank you all for hearing me. Sorry.
Great. Your strength is inspiring to all of us, Barbara. So thank you for sharing your story, your journey, and for your strength. And you do represent an important part of the ALD community. And I think you said it right, which is there needs to be a name. And we brought this up at the board meeting. So thank you for that. Well, we have lots of questions rolling in. First of all, we got to welcome Grady. Nice to see you.
I figured it was better than a picture.
Yeah, we like real life. So that's great. Grady, it's great to have you and especially joining us. So we really have a ALD community well represented here. So let me go through some questions, and if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to put them in, or if you raise your hand, Mike, if you could help me out. There are a couple of hand raises, we could get to them as well. So why don't we just roll through? So first question is, do any of you follow nutrition guidelines? Anybody want to take that?
We don't. I mean, I think at where Grady's point was, I mean, he was already so far progressed that it wouldn't really have made a difference. I've heard a lot of like the newborn screen parents, which I guess Sharon could talk more towards, but we don't.
Okay.
So I personally don't. And I think that question might be wrapped up into Lorenzo's oil and the diet that would be associated with that. And I know that in a few parents with children a little older than me, maybe they have pursued that route. When my child was old enough to be having any type of special diet, Lorenzo's oil actually kind of, I don't know if it's called went off the market, but was no longer, mass available in the United States, because the data did not really show that it had any meaningful effect in the outcomes of ALD. So there just wasn't data to show that it had that powerful efficacy, although maybe it did, but maybe just not significantly. And so because that, the number one, the data didn't show it and it wasn't widely available, that shaped my my decision-making process. And as I mentioned before, you know, it is a tough disease that, you know, these kids have to live with forever. And one of the other factors was that normalcy aspect, where, you know, coupled with the information that there was no data showing, you know, a ton of efficacy there, and the fact that I really wanted to give my child as normal of a life as possible, I made the decision not to go that route. That said, I do know moms that have. And, you know, I think it's because it's not widely, the oil is not widely available in the United States. There is, I think, a lot more legwork that is needed to have access to it. And then, of course, following that diet, you know, I know that you have to limit certain fats because you're supplementing with the oils, and there are a lot of recipes out there, and there's a lot of resources for that. So, you know, if that is a route that anyone out there, you know, wants to take, you know, it's not something that I personally, you know, was against. So I know those resources are out there, and I know personally my doctors have offered, you know, for me to see a nutritionist. But the overall feedback that I got from my actual neurologists were that's not necessarily a path that they recommend, and I should continue feeding my kid, you know, a diet that is supportive of, you know, a 4-year-old. So.
Thanks. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, several other questions. We'll keep it moving. Does anybody on the ALD community, medical professionals, know, is there newborn screening in Canada? Anybody from ALD community might be able to answer that right online. That would be great. I don't know. Next question, Jillian, what kind of conversations do you have with Grady about what's going on with him throughout the process?
We've been very straightforward with Grady from the beginning. He's also at the age where has a lot of access to social media and the internet. So he did a lot of his own Googling of it, unfortunately. And he did ask us right off the bat if he was going to die. And we said we were going to do everything in our power not to make that happen. We weren't sure, you know, what was going to happen. He's very aware of it. He does very well. I know someone else had asked with communication and stuff like that. Grady no longer processes sounds or language any longer. So he reads lips. He's a really good lip reader. But there are a lot of questions. It affects him daily. He has a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. He's very angry. He's not allowed to ever play football again. You know, that was his life. He can still play basketball. You know, he can't go to school right now because of COVID and stuff. And there's a lot of things that have been taken away from him. And even though he's doing so well, and we're so thankful every day with how well he's doing, our worlds have been totally flipped upside down. And it's like Sharon said, or actually Ken had said, the survivor's guilt type of thing. Although Grady is not in a wheelchair and he's here, his life is different and he struggles daily. And we're very honest with him. With every test that is done, with anything that could happen, but we've been very positive from the beginning as well. And we believe that that's really helped a lot. We weren't going to accept anything other than he was going to get through it. And, you know, he wants to be involved. He likes to be like the ALD big brother, and he likes to meet kids through Instagram and other families and talk to them and talk to the kids and kind of give kids heads up what's going to happen during the transplant process and how it feels and all that stuff. So he's really,
That's great. He's
done a really good job.
Awesome. Well, Jillian, thank you. And thank you, Grady. There is no newborn screening in Canada was the answer to the question earlier. And there's some struggles in that area. Barbara, did anything show up on your MRI, your brain or spinal cord?
Nothing on my MRI, my brain. I passed all the neuropsych testing. That was probably about 6 years ago now. I did the neuropsych, and the last MRI, there was nothing in my brain. My spinal cord, they never say anything. It's been years since I went to Hopkins. I did the Lorenzo's oil diet years ago, and nothing was said to me then.
Okay. Thank you for that. Jillian, during your bone marrow transfer, did they use mucomas? If so, how long was it used? Do you know what mucomas is? I don't.
You know, I'm honestly, I'm not sure. I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
Like, I think like Sharon was saying, where she jumped into things when her child was diagnosed. I did the opposite. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to read anything. I didn't want to join ALD Connect. I didn't want to know anything. And that went along with this treatment too. I kind of looked at Florian and Katie and just said, just save our son. We're putting his life into your hands. We trust everything you're going to do. Until Grady started, we knew he was doing okay. Then I jumped in full force. But I don't know if we use that or not. I know Florian's on there somewhere. He might know, but
by the way, if anybody's looking for answers, there's a lot in the chat box. Go to your chat box, and there are a lot of answers to some of these. They weren't directly, but let me keep going because the questions keep piling in, which is good. I love the fact that we have questions. So men are, that's you and I, Ken. In this case, are you on the Min 102 study, and are you able to walk? So Ken, you want to start there?
Yes. Yep. I'm able to walk. I use leg braces to maintain a lot of my balance. But yes, I am on the Min 102 trial. And yeah. I'm not going to
just both completed.
it's still probably not my, not for me to say. So
yeah, we both completed it. Our 2 years now. We're actually on the medication versus possibly being on a placebo, and that is the last part of it. And like Ken, I wear braces on each of my legs. And that helps with lift as well as mobility. And I use a cane, so I am able to walk at this time. And I'll tell you, the best advice for men that I've gotten was Dr. Raymond way back when, and that is stay as active as possible. And so I work out 7 days a week. I do a Peloton, or that's one thing that I think has made a difference in keeping stable. So next question, what resources or methods would you recommend for addressing the variety of lifestyle issues AMN causes, walking issues, sexual issues? Oftentimes local doctors don't know enough, which can be extremely frustrating. Yeah, I'll take it first, Ken. As far as I was fortunate. You really have to take your care in your own hands. And I have a great urologist who's helped with urgency issues and sexual issues. And if you don't have a terrific urologist locally, get one, because they treat it much like they would treat people with other, they get to understand the disease. And as far as walking, I kind of stumbled across the use of braces. I started with a stim unit, and then that only went so far. And then I shifted to a full brace. And you know what? It's been great. It's been terrific. Ken?
Yeah, I would say the same thing, especially find a good specialist. Like I was with Dr. Reza at Mass General, and he's the one who actually got me in touch with the guy with the leg braces, and we took it from there. I got a prescription, and I got him in for a hanger clinic, and that was the best thing that could have ever happened. Like a lot of times I was just falling and face planting, and knock on all wood, I can't tell you the last time I've fallen. So, but again, yeah, getting in touch with people that know what they're talking about, like you say, but doctors that aren't educated on the disease, I think that's a big help.
Yeah, and give up your pride, whether it be a or a wheelchair or whatever it is.
Yep, do what you got to do.
Do what you got to do. This question came in. I'm 34 years old, don't have the ability to walk alone without the help of a cane. I'm afraid to think about the future, what awaits me. There's a series of recommendations we would do. What can we do to improve? I know there's no cure. There is no medicine. Series of recommendations, what you would do. Well, Ken, I don't know if you, any suggestions?
I think it's just adjusting your lifestyle ultimately to hopefully to try to make it work for you, because there is no cure. But if you can change things in your life, my suggestion is try to keep a positive upbeat when you can, because that's good. And, with the help of, other aids, I would say. I mean, I don't know if anything else to add, Tim, but yeah.
I tell you, one of the biggest motto that I have that has helped me is called adapt, adjust, and move on. And adapting, I think, starts here. It's a mindset. I read a book, a powerful book that changed my thinking, called The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. And it really uncovers this secret, which is we become what we think about. So I think about positive things, and I think about all the things I had to be grateful for. So, and I'm sure many of you have other ways of dealing with it. How is Barbara's son doing after the stem cell? If I heard correctly, it was back in the 90s. Barbara?
That's correct. It was 1991. And he has had some difficulty in the last couple of years. He's been in to see Dr. Eichler and questioning AMN, and just
Okay.
nothing definitive yet.
All right. Well, the next panel begins in 1 minute. So I would encourage you to continue on these panels. And the next one is the industry panel. So thanks for joining us. Thank you for our panelists. You guys are wonderful. And a lot of great kudos from all the chats coming through. So thanks for your courage and inspiration. Take care. We'll see you all at the next session. See you, Grady.
See you, Grady.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Bye.